Mickey 17 is an adaptation of Edward Ashton's novel Mickey 7 and is written and directed by Bong Joon Ho. The movie stars Robert Pattinson as Mickey Barnes, a down-on-his-luck man who enters into an expendable program where a company can create as many copies of you as needed if you were to, say, die on the job, turning Mickey into a guinea pig while he travels to another world to start a new life. This is Bong Joon Ho's first movie since the Best Picture winning Parasite, and to say that I, along with most people, have been impatiently waiting to see what he'd do next is an understatement. This was one of my most anticipated movies of this year. It was one of my most anticipated of last year when it was originally slated to release. So I had pretty decently high expectations for this movie going into it. And to just get it out of the way, is Mickey 17 as good as something like Parasite or Memories of Murder? No, but those are some of the best movies of all time, in my opinion. This is a good movie and is very much in line with a lot of his other filmography. First, and probably my favorite part of this movie, is the acting. This is a cast of very recognizable established actors, so it's probably not surprising to hear that the cast is great, but it is worth saying that the performances all around are fantastic here. Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette play Kenneth and Ilfa Marshall, the main antagonists and leaders of this mission to start life on another planet. They both play their roles somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but believably daft, cruel, and annoying. Stephen Yeun plays Timo, Mickey's friend from Earth, and shines in his small moments throughout as a big old dickhead. Naomi Ackie plays Nasha, Mickey's girlfriend, a headstrong, dedicated person whose relationship with Mickey brings out the best in both of them. I've only seen Ackie in a handful of things, but this might be my favorite performance of hers so far. Her comedic timing brings a very refreshing dynamic to this type of story, and I thought she had great screen presence. And of course, Robert Pattinson once again turns in a fantastic performance as Mickey. It's been said before, but it should be said again. He's on a roll with his role choices in the last 8 years or so, and he surprises me every time. He's extremely likable and funny in this. His comedic timing, especially his physicality and physical comedy in this, is on point, and he and Akkie's chemistry is very believable. When Mickey is reprinted or cloned, each iteration has a slightly different personality or quirk that stands out more than the others. Mickey 17 is a bit more timid and is a little bit more akin to a neurotic character similar to like Woody Allen's main characters. This gives Pattinson another opportunity to also turn in an impressive voice performance for a couple variations of the character, and all of the voices here feel natural. He surprises me every time. Bong Joon Ho is one of my favorite directors, and I can see why he was attracted to adapting this story. It is a social commentary on the treatment of the working class, the concept of using clones as guinea pigs because you're technically not actually killing the original person. It takes a certain amount of corporate detachment to justify. In this version, multiple copies can't exist at once without defying laws, so only one iteration can exist at a time. When Mickey 17 miraculously survives what should have been another death, he discovers that he's already been copied in a more serious, angrier version of him, Mickey 18, in him butt heads. Bong's work, especially his last handful of movies, always puts an emphasis on class consciousness, the hypocrisy of the ones in charge, and the unneeded sacrifices they put the lower classes through. Bong has a very clear disdain for the ultra-wealthy, and Mark Ruffalo's character is an unabashed stand-in for Donald Trump. He's an idiot with too big of an ego, with too many resources at hand, being controlled by others to inflict his cruelty upon the populace, even his most rabid fans. Bong isn't mincing words with his comparisons. His emphasis on the theme of the preservation of nature and animals is also present here with the creatures the humans run into on the new planet. I respect the hell out of Bong for making sure that his messages on these things are still made clear in his stories. He is extremely anti-capitalist and is on the nose about it in the best way. This movie looks great. The cinematography is really solid and has some fun camera work from Bong. It's not as flashy as Parasite was, but the image quality and its direction does still stand out. The production design is also worth mentioning. The ship has the lived-in feeling of something like Alien, but in a more modern context of maybe a container ship or a cruise ship. It's ironically dystopian with the small prey quarters of the crew and the lavish quarters for the leaders. I also liked how a lot of this movie was structured, especially the first act. It did a lot of jumping around that I did enjoy quite a bit, and I felt like the first act did have the best energy in the movie and had the most momentum, and does a really, really good job at making this type of situation feel believable. For the movie itself, it is a surprisingly funny film. I expected a little bit more comedy from the trailers than something like Snowpiercer, but I and the people in the theater I was in were all laughing throughout. Bong does a great job at bringing different genres together and mashing them into his own thing. This is a pretty believable sci-fi future, and none of these characters or events feel far-fetched, and in fact feel pretty familiar. He's very obviously pointing out a lot of parallels with a lot of modern issues, and it works well. He also does a good job at knowing when to change the tone for the most part and move the comedy-heavy exposition into the actual drama of the story. I think Mickey 17 is cleverly written and sharp. I liked the inclusion of Pattinson's narration throughout. It really adds to an atmosphere of satire and helps the movie not become too self-serious. Pattinson plays off of himself very well when he's playing both Mickeys in a scene, and the visual effects are really, really solid here. When both Mickeys are on screen, it is pretty much seamless. I never saw anything that made me believe it wasn't just two Robert Pattinsons. I don't really have any big negative criticisms for this movie. It is all around a solid movie and a good time. My main issue is with probably the pacing. It doesn't lose its momentum necessarily in the story, but it does feel like it slows down quite a bit by the time we get to the end of the second act. There's a small storyline that is brought up in this time and is dropped that I didn't have an issue with, and I found it funny, but it didn't really contribute anything to the overall story because it's never addressed again. And while Bong's handling of the tone works for most of the film, there's a big tonal ask from the audience in an action that happens in the third act that I didn't think worked quite as well as Bong intended for it to. The third act itself is slightly underwhelming. We've seen this kind of story play out before, and when it's Bong Joon Ho behind the camera, it's entertaining, but nonetheless, it feels a little familiar. However, there is a contemplative epilogue that I really liked that makes it worth it. I had a good time with this movie. I think this can be argued to be Bong Joon Ho's most fun movie. This is a very, very kind of easygoing movie, but it also keeps its layers there that Bong includes with his very needed social commentary. I do think this is just as good as, if not his best English language film so far. I'd say this is on the same level as something like Snowpiercer. So I will be rating Mickey 17 a very strong B. I am excited to see what Bong does next. I just really hope it doesn't take another 6 years for his next movie to come out. What did you guys think of the movie? What is your favorite Bong Joon Ho movie? Where would you like him to go next in his filmography? I'm excited for him to do anything, but it would be awesome for him to revisit another crime thriller, kind of like Memories of Murder, in my opinion. Let me know, and I will be back with another video.